Hi, this is Annie Grace, and this is This Naked Mind podcast. And today I am being interviewed by someone named Gayle from Sober Bliss. And I'm really looking forward to speaking to her. She says she has new, exciting, different, and interesting questions for me. So I wanted to share this here as well because I think it's going to be really great. So I hope you enjoy.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Sober Bliss. Today, I'm really excited and delighted because I'm speaking to the wonderful Annie Grace. Hi, Annie.
Hi, Gayle. So wonderful to be here.
You too. Thank you. So, how's the weather where you are? It looks lovely and sunny.
It is sunny today. We've had snow up until recently, but it's really, I think it's turning a corner, hopefully. So, yeah.
Lovely. Well, for those people who don't know, and I'm not sure there's many of those around, but could you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you, please?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Annie Grace, and I've written two books, This Naked Mind and The Alcohol Experiment. And both books, specifically This Naked Mind, as it was my first, came from, really my own journey in finding myself in corporate life, drinking far more than I ever intended, and using it to cope, even when I didn't really drink much in high school or in college. And really wondering why, when I tried to cut back, it felt painful. It felt like I was missing out or I was depriving myself of something, especially when I didn't feel like that before, when I had such vivid memories of having a great time without alcohol, of relaxing without alcohol. And really my journey to say, okay, the big pivotal question was, well, what changed and how did it change and what does that mean? And so I did something sort of bizarre. I stopped trying to manage and moderate and quit drinking. I just said, all right, I'm gonna let that kind of be for a minute because it had been causing me so much internal anxiety, so much angst, to make promises that I wouldn't keep, to say, okay, nothing until Friday, and then I'd end up having, a few drinks on Wednesday, or, only 2 glasses of wine, and then I'd end up having 4 or 5 or more than I could count. And that happening over and over really undermined my confidence. It undermined my belief that I could do, this. It undermined my self, worth. It was a really kind of terrible place to be. And I saw that snowball happening and said, all right, I need to step out of this cycle and just dedicate myself, no matter what the answer is. If I find out that, alcohol is actually the missing link in my life and it's making everything beautiful and wonderful, and I should never stop. If that's what I find out, okay. But if I find out something else, I'm going to just follow what I learned. And so I really went on this journey different. And that took me about 13 months, 12 to 13 months of pretty intense research. But during that time, not trying to moderate, not trying to put brakes on, not trying to do anything, just really saying, I am going to make the time to understand what's happening here. And I looked into the brain, I looked into the subconscious mind, I looked into alcohol itself, I looked into neurology and neuroplasticity and so many things. And then I came out of my office one day and I told my husband, I was like, all right, well, I think I'm done drinking. So if you want to drink with me tonight's night, we can have our, typical bottle of wine. But then after that, I'm done. And he was like, yeah, right. Like, didn't believe me, but we drank our bottle of wine. And then sure enough, that was really it. And I just kind of didn't look back. And it was so freeing because it wasn't any longer a willpower thing. It wasn't as if I was trying to abstain from something I wanted. And it was a really, really good time. And then how the book ended up coming about is I was like, okay, other people need to know the stuff that I've learned, like this stuff. And by the way, I was telling my friends, and that's a good way to lose your friends. Luckily, I have graceful friends, but I'd show up to I literally showed up in Las Vegas on a group that a bunch of us college friends and our husbands were on. And I was like, you guys, oh my gosh, can you believe this? Alcohol does this to your brain and alcohol does this to your body. And what are we doing? And our whole society's been duped. And I'm like just on this soapbox bandwagon, like insanity. And they're just like, what has happened to you? What have you done with my friend? And but I did feel so powerful, like somebody does want this information. So I just took all my research and journals and put it out for just a free download online, uploaded a PDF. Yeah. And like 20,000 people downloaded it in the first 2 weeks. It was crazy. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is something. And I started getting letters from all over the world saying, this helped me too. This was the thing. This made it stick. This changed my life. And so I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to actually get this a book. And I reached out to a few publishers, and they're like, well, you don't have a platform. And I was like, okay, that's true. And then the other aspect was that it usually took, between 18 to 24 months. 18 was like the earliest. Usually it was 24, sometimes more, longer than 2 years to get a book published. And I was like, okay, no, people need this now. There's no way I'm waiting that long. So I said, okay, how can I figure out how to self-publish it? And so I looked into that whole thing, figured out how to self-publish it, and self-published this Naked Mind October 15th of 2015. Wow. And so it's just kind of been crazy since then, because it really did catch fire, word of mouth. I think when something like truly does work, it just has a life of its own. Something I'm just like, riding the coattails and okay, let me do what I can do. But also knowing very much that this whole thing, with people waking up to what alcohol is in their lives and how detrimental it is and how much it's taking from them instead of giving to them. And, this whole movement of sobriety is truly happening no matter what. And I just feel, really privileged to be able to come on and be a part of it. But I also understand this is going to happen. If I'm here, if you're here, it's just happening. It's just this human awakening of our time. Yeah. And it's really beautiful. And so, yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. So what was that last bottle of wine like then, the one that you shared with your husband? Because obviously it was unlike any other bottle of wine that you've ever had before, because you knew stuff that you didn't know before. So what was that like?
It was wholly unmemorable. Yeah, it was like, I do remember, and this was really, I think, just kind of I want to not to sound too cliche, but say like icing on the cake. I was very used to drinking well over one bottle by myself. And that was really typical. I don't remember what wine it was. I don't remember anything about it. I just knew it was in a bottle, not a box. And we had been generally drinking boxed wine because I had, a real big problem opening that second bottle. That was like one of those little red flags, like, hey, whoa, what are you doing? And so I'd started buying boxes so that that little, voice saying, what are you doing, would shut up and go away. And I could just, carry on well past one bottle. And that night, I remember we split and drank that one bottle, and I got sick. And so I probably only drank half or a little more. I usually drink faster than my husband did anyway, but maybe I drank even 3/4 of that bottle and I got sick. Mm-hmm. And it was just one of those things where, at that time with how much I was drinking and how high my tolerance was, there's no way I actually should have gotten sick from that wine. Mm-hmm. And I didn't drink anything else, but I remember throwing up, and I did not, the times that I had thrown up from drinking in the last, probably 5 or 6 years of my drinking, because my tolerance was so high, because I knew how to navigate it so I wouldn't get sick, because I was like a very seasoned, practiced drinker. It was very few and far between. Almost, I can't even remember very many at all. Yet that night I got sick, and it was just almost as if the whole universe was saying, this is the right choice. And I'm just going to just prove it to you just a bit more,
Yeah. And after you had that last bottle of wine and you decided, okay, that's it, never again, obviously you were very clear in your mind, but did you have any kind of cravings after that?
So this is another really atypical part of my story, because I didn't actually, a few things I think that happened. Number one, I didn't decide, okay, right, never again. I knew from my research, and I knew from really a lot of internal journaling and self-discovery, that every time I put rules and limits on myself, I just wanted what I said I couldn't have. It was like this, literally I could feel it. I could feel myself. And now I'm almost 5 years in, and I can say, the chances of me drinking again are pretty much nothing. I don't have any. And even saying that out loud doesn't affect me anymore. I can be like, I'm never going to have a drink again. It doesn't have the same, strength it did. But in those early days, that idea of I'm never going to drink again, it made me buck against it. So I didn't say that. I said, you know what? I'm going to drink as much as I want whenever I want. I'm just going to be really mindful about, do I actually want this drink, knowing everything I know? And I'm going to revisit the knowledge if I need to and really understand it. And, And so I made that choice for myself, which really served me. I don't know that that's right for everybody. I think there are very different types of people. Some people, they are kind of that, like, no, I need the rules. I need the rigidity. I need the structure. And I think you really need to honor what's true for you.
Yes.
Really important. But that was what worked for me. And then the other thing that I did along with that, and this was, again, really interesting, is I'd say, I don't know how many days it was later. And it's funny because I have the videos and I know the day that I stopped drinking. So I feel like I could probably piece it together, but I think it was probably 2 to 3 months afterwards. And I had just started to really like wonder, like, was I right? Like, wait a second, all my friends, I'd be hanging out with my friends, they'd be drinking, I'd be drinking my soda and lime, and they're seeming fine. Like, nobody's having ill effects outwardly. I'm like, no, this, and I remember it was like St. Patrick's Day, and I was just kind of like, everybody's having a good time. And I knew enough that I was never going to drink in the moment. Like, it was going to be a mindful decision. That was one thing that I was very clear on. I was never going to just kind of give in the moment. That was very much not what I was going to do, because I knew about how the subconscious mind worked. And I knew that if I was having a great time and then I had a drink, my brain would instantly say, oh yeah, drinking is key to having a good time. When I also knew that was totally false from a neurochemical perspective. So I was like, I'm not going to slip into it. Equally, if I was having a miserable time and completely emotional, anxious, numb, whatever, and then I had a drink, I knew that the drink was going to numb me enough to really say, like, okay, yes, alcohol is what, helped you get out of that, and it helped you relax, and it helped you have a good time. So I knew that I wasn't going to do it in the moment. That was kind of what I call a non-negotiable. It's never going to be in the moment. But that moment passed, St. Patrick's Day, and I was kind of like, I really want to know if I'm missing out. I want to know for myself. I want to know definitively. So what I did is I told my husband, we planned it out. It was about, a week and a half of planning. We waited for a night where, he could watch the kids downstairs. And I ended up setting up my camera, my iPhone, on a tripod, or like rigged tripod, hilarious. And just like, I remember I wanted it filmed. So I like put up a sheet behind me, and I said, okay, I'm going to get drunk, and I'm going to check in with the camera every 15 or 20 minutes. And so I filmed myself getting drunk and I had 2 bottles of wine. I planned to drink 2. But again, my tolerance, even after those few months, was nothing. So I did drink an entire bottle of wine. I did not quite get sick, but very close, very much had the spins. But I filmed it. I filmed the whole thing. And the truth is that I woke up the next morning knowing without a shadow of a doubt that there was nothing there for me, that there was nothing there. Like, even the beginning, those early tipsy feelings that make you feel like that's what hooks us in the first place, right? That like spike of euphoria. I timed it. It was 20 minutes. And it was not even that great. It was almost like just the edges around the room got fuzzy. I felt like a little surge of energy, but it was kind of like a anxious surge of energy. It wasn't like a nice surge of energy. It was kind of like, okay, I'm slightly off balance, not like off balance like you're dizzy, but just like, okay, the world has shifted a bit.
Yeah.
But it wasn't pleasant. I recognized the feeling because I'd felt it so many times before. But what I had thought was pleasant, it wasn't actually pleasant when I had detached all the meaning from it. And what I had since learned is that when you are continuously drinking, you are continuously creating this withdrawal. So, the alcohol is addictive. It comes into your system. And as it leaves, your body goes into a very slight withdrawal every single day. And so that withdrawal feels uncomfortable. And guess what? That discomfort from the withdrawal can be relieved by the next drink. And so it's this constant cycle that you're on. And when you don't have that, so it was almost like, imagine this, right? If you scratch your arm really, really hard, it can feel really good if you have a huge mosquito bite. But if you don't have a huge mosquito bite, scratching your arm does not really feel good, especially if you're scratching it hard. You're like making it red and raw, and it doesn't feel good. And it was the exact same situation when I didn't have the withdrawal from the previous drinks because I hadn't been drinking for months. The alcohol didn't feel good. And then the drunk part happened. And I couldn't watch the videos, Gayle. I mean, I remember like just for years and years. I actually watched the videos for the first time just about a year ago because we were doing our first live event in Denver. And I was like, right, you know, or no, sorry, it was a little bit longer than that. It was the first time I launched the alcohol experiment. It was like a 30-day challenge online. And I said, I want to show these videos because I want to give this as like a tactic if somebody wants to try this, you know, and I want to show my videos. So I went through and I watched them and I like edited them down to like a 15-minute video. And it was painful, but I couldn't watch them for years and I didn't need to. There was no need for me to watch the videos. I just knew. I was like, there's nothing in there for me. And for me, it was so pivotal. And it was so, there was so much freedom in that. Just like after that, cravings, like if something came up and I was like, oh, I feel like I'm missing out because of a drink, I'd be like, oh, no, wait. I remember what alcohol actually makes me feel. And I just find something that made me feel like I wasn't missing out. Like maybe, you know, something sweet to drink or, you know, something nice or whatever. And I just got creative with finding other ways to make myself feel part of things or feel included. But yeah, it was a really interesting experience.
Yeah, I remember you wrote about that in your book, didn't you? And you said that you didn't put any music on, you didn't have the TV on, you were completely alone. So you didn't associate it with, you know, relaxing music and things like that. It was just the alcohol.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, you know, because if alcohol is really fun, truly fun, it should be fun without anything else, right? Like for me, you know, going for a walk, I find fun. I don't need to be watching TV while I'm on my walk. I don't need to be listening to music while I'm on my walk. Like I will still enjoy it, right? So if something is actually fun, you should be able to enjoy it without anything else. And so that was really important. And I think it is really important because even like Netflix and wine, right? I remember so many nights when my husband was working late and I would turn on the TV and watch whatever guilty pleasure show of the moment and have my wine and completely think that it wouldn't have been as fun without the wine.
Yeah.
You know, the great thing about that, I will tell you, is that I can now rewatch those shows and have no memory of them in the first place. Double.
So do you think that it's important then when somebody is considering sobriety or you know, this lifestyle change, do you think it's important that they understand what alcohol actually does to us physically and mentally and not just try and, you know, kind of get through it or white knuckle it or anything?
I think there's a few factors. I think that number one, there is absolutely a physical and chemical aspect of this. Like there's a physical dependency that was creating that withdrawal symptom, that itch that I was scratching. And you know, that lasts a few weeks.
Yes.
And so if you have it where you're more than a few weeks out and you've gotten through those first few weeks and you still find yourself really craving or really wanting alcohol, that's emotional. That's mental. You know, that's really cognitive. That's where, yes, I think it's vital that you understand what alcohol is and what it does to your body because you're going to stay stuck there. Now, I know that lots and lots, you know, many people have just reached a point where they're like, no more, I can't do this to myself anymore. No matter what it is, no matter how bad it is, I'm just not going to do it. And the thing is that you can reach that over time. Like over time, you can have enough life experiences without alcohol to have proven to yourself very definitively, like, oh, okay, you know, I've been to enough football games now without a drink that I know football's fun without a drink. But you can shortcut that process by really saying, okay, what is it in alcohol that makes it fun? What are the chemicals? How does it affect my brain? Oh, that's interesting. How long does it last? Oh, 20 to 30 minutes. Oh, that's a bummer. How long does it, you know, make me feel bad after that? Oh, 2 to 3 hours. Ooh, yikes. And then cognitively, you know, these things, you have these tools. So then your first football game, you can approach it with okay, I'm curious. There's a chance I might have fun here. Whereas if you're just white knuckling it, your first football game, you're just going through it to get through it. You know, and I know so many people who have that sobriety story, and there's nothing wrong with it because it will come. It just might take longer, you know? And so I don't think there's any wrong way, absolutely. But I do think it can be so helpful to educate yourself because you really can free yourself of those emotional chains a lot sooner.
Yeah, yeah. Have you always been interested in science and things then, or did you get this passion when you did your research for yourself?
Always interested in science. I have a
Yeah.
master's in science.
Oh, do you
And
really?
yeah, and it was actually specifically to like consumer behavior science and marketing, but it is technically a master's in science from the University of Colorado. And I have always been interested in how things work. Now, I think I've struggled to like go into like physics or something because I have always had a really hard time with math, and those things go hand in hand. But
Yeah.
reading something like A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking and just understanding that there's actual mathematical equations to back up the theories, that's enough for me. I just
Yeah.
want to I just want to think about the theories. I want to think about it in the abstract and how things fit together and how things work. And I've absolutely always been fascinated with okay, well, why is this? And I think I've just always had this very innate curiosity of saying like, this doesn't make sense. And I've had, something that I will credit my parents with, because I was raised in a very alternative situation, a tiny little log cabin on the back of a mountain, no running water, no electricity. My parents were hippies. And so they were just very free thinkers, very much into just, like there was no, they took the social norms of their upbringing, a pretty conservative religious Christian upbringing and then a Jewish upbringing, and kind of
Mm.
threw them off and said, you know what, we're just gonna be like children of the earth and question and figure things out. And so I didn't have a lot to unlearn from
Mm.
a perspective of like, this is true because everybody said it's true. So when I approach things, like I'd be like, wait, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter that nobody else sees that this doesn't make sense. Like for me, it didn't make sense to me why, and it didn't matter to me that none of my friends were asking that question. Like, I think very quickly people can say, this doesn't make sense, or I'm curious about that. But then they can look around and they can be like, but someone else would have asked that first, or, someone else would have found that. Why isn't anybody else? So no, it must be nothing. And I just kind of didn't have that. Like, I was like, no, like maybe I really have that like voice in my head saying, oh no, somebody else might have asked this. So I was just really innately curious about why things and how things worked, and very curious about how I worked.
Yeah.
Why is this different for me? And I think I have a relatively low threshold for discomfort. And I think that, not that that's necessarily a good thing, but I think that it served me well. Like if I was in a career that was really uncomfortable, or working for somebody, or in a friendship that turned out to be really uncomfortable, I would I've never been one to be like, oh, well, it's just, I've always been like, no, there's got to be a better way,
Yeah.
And so when I started getting really uncomfortable with my drinking, I was like, no, there has to be something that I'm missing. And I really approached it from that perspective.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's so interesting. So obviously you were clear in yourself and you were happy with your decision and the choices that you'd made. Did you come up against any challenges from other people or society in general?
Yes, for sure. I mean, I remember the first business trip that I went on to Brazil,
Oh,
and I hadn't been down there, and the Brazilians that my colleagues, we we had drank all over the world together. We would like watch the sunrise in Dubai a few months ago, and then I had stopped drinking like kind of on a dime. And I remember going down there, and they had been so excited to show me their local drink and to show me, the different liquors and to show me a good time and to take me out dancing and all this stuff. And I was like, no, we're still gonna do all that stuff. I'm just ordering the juice. Like I want the pina and agua or whatever, and it was, some people were accepting and some people were like really like disappointed, like a, a strange level of disappointment, to where if I was pregnant or on medication, it would have been okay. But since I was just not drinking just for the sake of it, like it was not okay. And it was very, eye-opening. And that was one of many different trips like that I took internationally. And that was probably the most intense one. That's why I bring it up. But it was really eye-opening. And, I've since learned, and it's really true, that absolutely across the board, the people who kind of react the strongest are just showing you what's inside them.
Yeah.
That's all they're doing. They're just showing you the fear that's inside them. I remember when my friend stopped drinking. She actually got sober almost 10 years ago now. And she went to AA, and she came home from AA, and she's like, you guys, I stopped drinking and I'm going to stop. Like, I'm done. And I was like, I remember I reacted the strongest. I was the one who was like, wait, no, you don't really have a problem. No way. Like, we drink together. What does that mean about me? And I really grilled her. I'm ashamed to say that there was many times in the few years between when she stopped and when I stopped that I would make her feel uncomfortable by like being like the first, everybody else is kind of like, oh, she's here, we don't have to drink. And I'm like, no way, dude, I'm drinking. Like, it's her choice not to drink. It's my choice to drink. Like, I'm ordering the wine. And so I think I certainly, when I look at that in my own experience, I'm like, oh, that was from fear. That was from me feeling like I needed to double down on my decision. Otherwise, what could be wrong with me? What if I had a problem? What if I was also broken? What if there was something that I needed to fix? What if this was, and because I was already thinking all those things at like a subconscious, at a deep level, even at a conscious level in the middle of the night sometimes, her stopping drinking was really shining a mirror up to myself. And so now if I could go back and tell myself, like, don't worry, people aren't attacking you. People are just showing you what's inside them. They're showing you their own fear. They're showing you their own insecurities. They're showing you their own points of sensitivity and pain. I think I could have navigated it a bit better than I did, but it was certainly, it is a bit of a minefield, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I've had similar experiences with family even, who just don't get it. I think that's it. They don't get it, and they see you doing that, and like you say, they kind of start thinking about themselves and worrying about that, and they don't necessarily mean to be unkind, but they just can't help it somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you live, Gayle?
I live in Spain, but I'm from the northeast of England.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it probably even more so to some degree? I don't know. I mean, everybody says their country is like the booziest country. We all believe that about our own countries, but it does seem like Spain has quite a reputation for.
Well, they do. In my village is really tiny. I think we have about 1,100 people full time here, and there's 8 bars, which in the summer especially are open like 24 hours a day. And it's very common at 10 o'clock to see the workmen sharing a bottle of beer with their breakfast. There's wine at lunch. There's obviously tapas before dinner, and then there's alcohol with dinner, and then afterwards. And I remember once I went into the town hall in the winter really early to do some paperwork, and they offered me a shot of something, and I was like, what? 8 o'clock in the morning? And they said, oh, it's really good for the cold. It's like, no.
Wow.
I know. And I drank it as well, and I was a bit woozy at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's like, what's going on? But it's quite normal for them. In all the shops at Christmas time, they offer customers little shots of whatever. So yeah. But funnily enough, we didn't tell anybody. I stopped drinking with my husband. We stopped together. We didn't tell anybody at first. And when we did gradually explain to people, we weren't drinking anymore, the Spanish people, they couldn't really care less. They were like, yeah, whatever, here's an alcohol-free beer. But
nice.
The British people living here, they were like, what? You can't live in Spain and not drink? So that was a bit of a surprise, definitely.
Yeah. Interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So you said it's been almost 5 years now since you stopped. What is the one thing, if there is one thing, that your top tool, your top strategy for helping you stay on the path?
It's funny because I don't even feel like I make any effort anymore to stay on the path.
Yeah.
Which is great. So it's an interesting thing, but I'm trying to think back to early days. It was so clear for me. Like it was just so clear, especially after that experiment, that this wasn't, it wasn't like, there was no option, it was like, I remember, I'll give this analogy because I think it's a good one. After my second son was born, I started having this insane cramping pain on a very irregular basis. And I could not tell where it came from, what was happening. And so it turned out my doctor said it's probably a food sensitivity. So you need to start eliminating different foods and see what works. And so after about 6 months of this, and I mean, one time I almost was put in hospital because it was just so painful. And I thought something was seriously like burst out, that it was eggs. And it was funny because I found out it was eggs. I knew it was eggs. And then that time that I almost went to the hospital, somebody had brought in these egg sandwiches and I didn't realize it had egg in it. And so I ate one. And then all of a sudden, a few hours later, I was just basically on the floor and it was just so painful. But the thing about it is that when I found out that it was eggs, I mean, I love eggs. Eggs are great. Eggs are in everything, they're a great source of protein. There's so many ways you can make them. They're super good. But now that I know that eggs cause me really severe stomach pain, I don't have to make an effort to try to not eat eggs anymore. I mean, obviously there was the accidental time and now I need to be more careful about making sure there's no eggs in my food. But it was such it's a little sad, like, oh, bummer. Eggs were good, but so much more relief, that my relief like far outweighed my sadness, because it was like, oh, thank goodness. Like I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to have a hangover anymore. I don't have to say anything stupid anymore. I never have to throw up from drinking. I never have to feel the spins or the shakes or have that weird alcohol smell on my skin. I never have to have my kids come up to me and say my teeth are purple. I never have to wonder if I said anything bad to my husband. Like, thank goodness. Like, oh, so much gratitude, to know that, okay, eggs were the culprit. I don't have any more pain, or alcohol was the culprit. And I think you only really have to maintain an effort when you feel like there's really a benefit, like with eggs, I can get that same protein in other ways. There's other things I can eat. So there's, it's no real benefit, and it certainly doesn't outweigh the cost. And same with alcohol, there's so many things that I can drink. And I drink like more liquid than anybody I know. In fact, everybody I know makes fun of me about it, because I'm always having like, I've got my my decaf coffee. It's really risque. And then, I'll probably make some tea next. And then I've got like lots of sparkling waters, and I just always have something in my hand. And, I make it kind of fun, but it really, because I don't see the benefit. I haven't had to put a lot of effort into it. And I think that's something that comes from the way I sort of did it too, is because all my effort happened before I stopped drinking. That was my years of moderation, or trying to moderate, and it not working. That was my years of research and knowledge. That was my years of mindset shift. And I've really tried to write the book in the same way, where you don't stop drinking at the beginning of the book. You're not even asked to stop until the end of the book, where it's like up to you. Because I think, going through that before makes it so that on the other side, there is relatively little effort, and it's really freeing.
Yes, definitely. I agree. What's the best thing, do you think, then, about having an alcohol-free life now?
I think there's there's so many things I could say. I think that really the best thing is being back in touch with me. I think that alcohol takes you and yourself and puts a big fat barrier right in between it, because, your deepest self, your highest self, your inner self, your guide, your intuition is always trying to speak to you. And it uses the tools it has. And sometimes, hey, guess what? This man isn't right for us, or this situation isn't right for us, or this business partnership isn't right for us, or you need to be on your guard here. And when we are always pouring alcohol onto our discomfort, we drown out that inner voice. We drown out that intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have that part of me fully reawakened and to be super sensitive to it and be like, okay, like I'm just going to live with all of it, you know? And yeah, is it easy? No. I mean, I woke up this morning, I was just telling my friend Jennifer, I woke up with like just the craziest anxiety this morning. And it was just hours of it. And I'm like, everything is just falling apart, and nothing is falling apart. But it just felt like a weight on my heart, and it felt like a pit in my stomach. And it was so real. And it's eased up now, but like that just happens to me sometimes. And just to be like, okay, that's okay. Is it going to kill me? No. Is it uncomfortable? Yes. Can I just get curious about it and watch it and see what it does and how long it lasts? Yeah, I can. And by the way, who said I always have to be comfortable? Who said I never need to feel pain? Who said I never need to feel discomfort? And so I think and when you do that, when you start to live through your discomfort and you start to live into the parts of your life that, you know, may be trying to tell you something, a few things happen. Number one, you start to change those things. You start to, if there's something really wrong, you start to fix it. You know, if you're really in a job that's sucking your soul away, if you stop drinking, you can't stay in that job
No.
because it's too uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If you're really in a relationship that is absolutely wrong for you and making you less of who you need to be in the world and stifling your spirit, you can't stay in that relationship fully awake. And that's a beautiful thing. Yes, it's freaking painful, but it's beautiful. And so you start changing the things that are really wrong, and then you start noticing when you just feel emotions and nothing's really wrong, and you become the observer, and you develop, you know, emotional resilience, because you say, guess what? This storm I'm feeling, I felt this morning, I journaled about it, I woke up and I was like, I've been here before. I've been here before, and I survived it. And in a few hours, it will pass. And if I don't let myself go into the dark place of starting to assign this intense anxiety to something, maybe it's my husband, maybe it's how bad I'm parenting right now, or my kids, or, you know, whatever the case is, give it some, you know, nasty meaning, it won't last, because it doesn't have anything to latch onto. Whereas before, if I would have woken up with that anxiety, I would have said, no, there's something wrong. I couldn't feel this way without something being wrong. So I would have said, no, I'm just the worst mom ever, and this is what's happening. And I would let that live for days and days and days, because I'd attach all my thinking to it. Whereas now I can feel them. I get that anxiety, and it's literally like there's all these little people inside me. They're all me, but they're all the most scared parts of me, or the most judgmental, punishing parts of me. And they're all yelling, and they're all saying, who are you to do this? And what about me? And this is wrong, and that is wrong. And I can just kind of hear them all and be like, oh man, I'm not gonna pick any of you up and make you true, because you're just making a lot of noise right now. And that level of observation is never possible when I was drinking, like never even close, you know? And it doesn't mean that the emotions are gone. I think I feel emotions much more so. I think I went through, you know, probably a decade of not even ever shedding a tear when I was drinking, but I was also living this really numb life where the highs were dampened and the lows weren't even there. And so it was like, it just wasn't really worth it. And so to be back in touch with this life that's really full of all the emotions and the whole spectrum and everything that I'm experiencing, that's the best part, without a doubt.
Yeah, because we're supposed to feel all of these things, aren't we? Otherwise, you know, what's the point if we don't feel them? And I completely agree with what you say. You know, the highs with alcohol were just, you know, not really proper highs, and the lows, well, either, you know, you may certainly blow everything out of proportion and it was a complete disaster and the world was ending. Or like you say, you know, it was just kind of flat. Life was just flat. But now there's ups and downs, and yeah, you deal with them, but that's part of life. That's what it's for. It's what it's all about. So do you think that this mindfulness has come obviously with leaving alcohol behind? You become more mindful and aware of everything. And is that an important part of your life now?
Yes, for sure. And I think I think it was important before. I
Mm-hmm.
just think I had a big, huge block in between me and my greater intuition, so it was kind of dumbed down, or, not loud enough, but it was always really important for me. I've always been very self-inquisitive, like, what's going on with me? Why do I feel this? Why do I think this? What do I really want? Why am I not happy? Always asking myself these questions. It's just as if it has been really enhanced. And it's almost as if, when you're you're on an airplane or something, your ears won't pop. And then you get down and 20 minutes after you get off the plane, they pop and you're like, oh, I can hear everything. Whoa, you didn't even realize you were half deaf. And that I think is really what it's like for me.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you cope now then, when you get, I don't know, maybe overwhelmed with work, or, anxious like you were this morning, or super stressed? What kind of thing do you do now to get through it?
My go-to things, and I have tried the gamut of things, and I've done a ton of research on what scientifically works the best.
Mm-hmm.
The things that scientifically work the best are actually some of the hardest things to get motivated to do, which is interesting. But once there's this idea of motivation that is kind of a farce, to be honest with you, because motivation doesn't just happen. It's not just going to come out of the blue. You actually have to act your way into feeling like doing the thing you need to be doing. So I would say, okay, right, I know that these certain things work the best, so I'm just going to do them long enough to see if they work. Again, sort of like an experiment, getting really curious, see if this works for me. And then guess what? Once I started to realize it worked for me, my motivation was very, very high. So those things for me, and again, they're all according to science. There's so much science to back this up. But the first one is exercise, without a doubt. And especially for me, I consider high intensity exercise like the best, like interval exercise, something where I really get my heart rate up. And it helps me just burn off my adrenaline, burn off that cortisol. I can feel like a completely different human being. My perspective on life can go from gloom and doom to like, oh, everything's so hopeful. Like, I don't even feel like I'm in the same universe before and after. And so I joined a Taekwondo gym, and I do Taekwondo. And then I have a spinning bike that I do that. And those are my go-to. And then I run. So those things, and those have been, just like game changers. And again, there are things that I used to do before drinking, but when drinking came around, I would walk into my house and I'd be like, I'm stressed. Okay, well, there's a bottle of wine and there's my running shoes. Looks a
Yeah.
little easier to pour the wine and turn on the TV, And so very, like, the things that I used to do the spin bike all the time. We lived in Manhattan, and like we had the best spin studios in the world, and we'd go, and it's high intensity, aerobic exercise. I do it all the time. And then I really started drinking, and it really dwindled off. And so just rekindling my love for some of those things is really cool. I used to kickbox all the time. Again, during my decade of like really intense drinking, it completely went away. So just bringing those things back has been huge.
Mm-hmm.
The other two things that I'll say, because they're really my go-to, actually I'll give three because they're my three other go-to. Number one is protein. I don't have it with me because I already finished it, but like I have a protein shake every morning. So I like have low blood sugar, hypoglycemic, and it goes up and down. And if I do protein, it evens that out. It takes that away. Totally a game changer. I always have like a jar of nuts on my desk, and like just always do the protein. The other thing is journaling. Just writing it down, because it allows me to become the observer. So it allows me to step out of the emotion and the feeling and say, okay, what am I feeling? Okay, what are all the voices trying to say? Is that really true? And it's not magic. Like it doesn't make you feel. I wrote for, probably 3 or 4 pages this morning, on the verge of tears, feeling so anxious. And it didn't make me feel better in the moment, but it allowed me not to get caught up in the feeling worse. It allowed me to put my thoughts on paper and be like, okay, those things that you're worried about, they're not actually true. Things are, those things aren't true. So it allows you to really sort of become the observer. And then the last one I'll say is just trying to get outside and be outside in the sunshine or in the sunlight as much as possible, and even just a few times a day, I will literally, like, once an hour, once every hour and a half, I walk outside my office and I just take a few deep breaths and look around and just try to just be outside, and just get like a little bit connected back with myself. So those are really my go-to things.
Yeah, I can relate to those. And they're all good tips for people, who are going through the sobriety journey, especially getting outdoors, I think, because nature is a wonderful healer. And I think you just feel better, don't you, when you get outside and, like you say, take some deep breaths and just, disconnect from what's going on inside and just be in nature. That's wonderful. Yeah. I don't want to keep you too long, but I would just like to ask you, obviously you've got the Naked Mind book, the Alcohol Experiment book, this Naked Mind Live, and the Alcohol Experiment, which is the email Facebook course, and this Naked Mind Intensive. Which bit of your job do you like the best?
Probably this part, talking to people and connecting. And I'd say this in terms of talking to you, and also this in terms of like the coaching, the group coaching that I do and bringing people together. The live event, it's the same thing. It's actually real life people face to face, it's absolutely incredible. So I love that. But I really do love the research and the writing too. So I'm, working on a few other things, and that's just and that happens literally in my notes app when I'm just out and about thinking of things or observing my own behavior in regards to whatever thing it is that I'm trying to figure out. And that's just really fun. I wouldn't say that it feels like a job though at all. It just really blends into my life, this like innate level of curiosity and being like, I wonder why I really wanted that birthday cake, sort of thing. So,
yeah. What is next then for Annie Grace and this Naked Mind?
So the immediate next thing, which is really exciting, is I've been working on the curriculum for this for 3 years. I was asked to do this within literally months of this Naked Mind being published. I was asked by a psychologist from the NHS, actually in the UK, for a curriculum so that he could be trained to bring this Naked Mind methodology to his clients and patients. And so since then, I've been like, okay, what would that look like? How could I take what I kind of did naturally and put it into a curriculum where I could train others to do it? So we just launched this Naked Mind Institute, and it is a school where people can go through and become certified Naked Mind coaches, and which is great because there's a huge need for people, really to do. That way we can do more live alcohol experiments, more intensive programs, and then also individual and one-on-one coaching. And I have a vision that it would be amazing to start doing live, like 1 to 2 day workshops where you're just like go through all of the, like, just really like rip the Band-Aid off, do it all together, do it with a group that you keep in touch with, and you just have this amazing, proper, like totally transformational workshop where you walk in one person and you walk out ready for your new life. And I think that's absolutely possible within, even maybe 1 day, 1 to 2 days. I have no doubt that is a possibility for people. So that's really what's next, which is really exciting.
That's fantastic. So exciting. So finally then, what piece of advice would you give to somebody then who is maybe watching this and they're thinking, I don't know if sobriety is for me, I'm a bit scared. What should they do? What do you think?
I think they should, first of all, is just realize that they're not alone. I think that's the number one thing, is just, take a look around, maybe look at some different Facebook groups or look online and just understand that, like, you're just so not alone in this. Millions of people are questioning this. And then I think the second thing they should do is realize that, is sobriety right for me might be the wrong question for them.
Yes.
because I think that I stayed stuck for a long time in this fear of having to give up drinking. That was not what I wanted to do. I just wanted to, put it back in its box. I wanted it to be small and irrelevant, but I didn't want it to be, I didn't want to make it big because I was abstaining from it. And now I was, living this life of, in recovery and of abstinence and like make it this big thing. I didn't want that either. I didn't want either of those things, to be stuck drinking or to be stuck not drinking, but thinking about drinking all the time. That didn't sound good. So I would say take the pressure off yourself. Like, I don't know what's right for you. What's right for you might be that you take a 30-day experiment and you go back and you're like, okay, I'm totally back in control and I do this on occasion. Or what's right for you might be that you take a 30-day experiment and you're like, mind blown, my life has never been better. I'm not going to drink anymore, but the pressure of that question prevents us from actually asking the far more important questions of, would my life be better if I drank a bit less? Like, is this good enough? We ask this question and it's so loaded of, do I have a problem? Or am I an alcoholic? And those questions, they just can really keep us stuck. And the truth is that most people don't have to answer those questions. You never have to answer the, do I have a problem to change? Yeah, some people do. There are some people who will not, enter a place, or they're chemically dependent and they need that title and label and definition in order to say, right now I have to change because this is who I am. And because of this, I can't drink anymore. And there are a percentage of people who need that. And if that's you, obviously follow your heart. But I think for the majority of people, and according to the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, only 10% of excessive drinkers are clinically dependent to alcohol. So 90%, the majority of people, they don't need to ask that, am I never going to be able to drink again question. They just need to enter the conversation with like curiosity and this level of, okay, is this good enough? I mean, is this good enough? Am I satisfied being hungover a few days a week? Is this good enough? Am I satisfied feeling, a bit bloated because I've been overdoing it with the beer? Like, is this good enough? Because that question isn't scary. That question is like, all right, let me just try this out. That's actually the whole reason I created the alcohol experiment, which, it's just 30 days. It's online. You get a video and an email. It's 100% free. And it's just to dip a toe and see like, is this good enough? And so if anybody's interested in that, it's always free and it's at alcoholexperiment.com.
Yeah, I'll put the links and things in the bottom of the video. So maybe like you say, change the question, and instead of focusing on what you might be giving up, focus on how your life could be better if you changed it in terms of alcohol. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Annie. I've really enjoyed talking to you today, and thank you so much for giving up your time. And it was just lovely to meet you and talk to you, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Have you tried the alcohol experiment? Okay, if not, drop everything and go to thisnakedmind.com/experiment. This free 30-day challenge is designed to interrupt your patterns and put you back in touch with the best version of you. You remember it was that version of you that's living your most joyful life, the version that doesn't need alcohol to relax or to have a good time and is having more fun than ever. And again, this is a totally free challenge that will change everything for you. So learn more and join me 100% free at thisnakedmind.com/experiment. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.